The night Seattle rain hammered against the windows when everything in Maddie Carter's life snapped at once. 8 months pregnant, ankles swollen, breath tight, she sat alone on the couch, waiting for a husband who no longer remembered he had a wife. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. At first, she thought it was Brad finally coming to his senses, but the screen lit up with words that sliced through her like a blade. "Maybe you should stop being so needy. Brad deserves someone who isn't a burden." Another message followed. "He's with me tonight. Focus on your baby and stop clinging." The words were cruel, too cruel to come from Brad, even in his worst moments. And then the realization hit her. It wasn't Brad texting, it was Kendra, his mistress, using his phone. Her hands trembled, the nausea rising so fast she had to press a palm to her belly. Her baby kicked hard, as if reacting to her heartbreak. She whispered, "How could you, Brad? How could you let her?" The apartment around her felt colder than the rain outside. The unfinished crib in the corner blurred behind her tears, a reminder of the life she thought she was building. The man she trusted had handed his mistress the power to humiliate her, to crush her spirit entirely. A sharp pain shot through her side. Stress, fear, betrayal, all of it slammed into her body at once. Maddie clutched her stomach, trying to breathe through the tightening ache. She knew this wasn't just heartbreak anymore, this was dangerous. She reached for her phone to call for help, just as another contraction ripped through her. The screen slipped from her fingers and crashed onto the floor. And that's when she saw headlights outside. A sleek black Mercedes S-Class rolled to a stop, not Brad's car. Someone unexpected stepped out. Someone who would change everything. And at that moment, Maddie realized her life was about to split in two. Maddie Carter, had never imagined her life would shrink into something so fragile, so breakable, that even a text message could shatter it. Before the exhaustion, before the swelling ankles and lonely nights, she used to be the kind of woman who could lift an entire office with a single smile. Soft-spoken, humble, warm, yet always the first to stay late, the first to help, the last to complain. People trusted her. People depended on her. But somewhere along the way, she stopped believing she deserved anything in return. Growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Seattle, Maddie had been taught to survive quietly. Her father's medical bills, her mother's exhaustion, the debts that never seemed to shrink. She had learned early what sacrifice felt like. So when Brad Turner swept into her life with that charming grin and promises of a fresh start, she believed him. She wanted to. She needed to. He made her feel chosen, special, worth loving. Their early years together had been simple, cheap date nights, long walks near the pier, dreams whispered between two people who didn't know how easily dreams could rot. Maddie worked hard as a junior accounting clerk, while Brad climbed the corporate ladder. At first he seemed grateful, proud even, but ambition can sour a man faster than bitterness. And slowly, Brad's hunger for more money, more admiration, more excitement, grew bigger than his commitment to the life they built. By the time Maddie found out she was pregnant, the first cracks had already formed. He still kissed her forehead, still brought her takeout on late nights, still called her baby. But something in his eyes had already drifted somewhere she couldn't follow. And Maddie, terrified of raising a child without a father, convinced herself that things would get better. But pregnancy didn't soften Brad, it hardened him. Every doctor visit she attended alone, every shift she worked while he networked, every cold night in bed praying he'd come home before midnight, Maddie felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller, becoming invisible in her own marriage. Yet, even in the loneliness, she loved fiercely. She read parenting books, folded tiny onesies, saved every spare dollar for diapers. She whispered to her baby each night, promising a world gentler than the one she lived in. And maybe that's why the betrayal hurt so deeply, not because Brad cheated, but because he let someone else speak cruelty into her life at the very moment she needed protection the most. Seattle had always been a city of contrasts, misty mornings wrapped in quiet beauty and nights soaked in relentless rain that hid the cracks beneath its polished skyline. For Maddie Carter, the city didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a maze she kept getting lost in. Her world had shrunk to 3 places: their small, third-floor apartment, her crowded office at the logistics company, and the bus route connecting the two, each one carrying a different weight of exhaustion. Their apartment, once a symbol of new beginnings, now felt more like a holding cell. The beige walls, peeling near the baseboards, echoed with the silence left behind by a husband who never seemed to come home. The crib in the corner, unfinished, unpainted, still missing screws, was a daily reminder of how alone she truly was in preparing for the baby. Even the soft glow of the kitchen light couldn't warm the space anymore. Her workplace, a dull gray building overlooking the industrial park, wasn't much better. Fluorescent lights flickered above old carpet, and the hum of outdated computers filled the room like static. Her desk was wedged between a filing cabinet that never closed properly and a window that overlooked delivery trucks rumbling in and out. Still, this was the one place she felt somewhat grounded, where people still saw her as useful, dependable, necessary. Brad, meanwhile, orbited a different version of Seattle entirely. Sleek rooftop bars, networking lounges with floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of restaurants where a single whiskey cost more than Maddie's weekly groceries. The separation between their worlds wasn't just emotional, it was physical, economic, and painfully visible. Seattle's luxury district, where Brad liked to meet clients, felt like another universe. Places like the rooftop at the Thompson Hotel or the private lounges along the waterfront, spaces filled with people who never worried about medical bills, overdue rent, or maternity leave. People who lived fast, dressed sharp, and never carried groceries home on the bus. Kendra fit right into that world. Bold lipstick, designer heels, a confidence sharpened by opportunism. She walked in spaces where Maddie felt she did not belong. Brad followed her willingly. Meanwhile, Maddie floated between survival and hope, holding her belly on the walk home, studying the lights of the city through the rain, wondering how two people who once shared everything now lived in worlds so far apart. And deep down, a new fear began to form. What if Brad wasn't just slipping away? What if he had already crossed into a life where she and the baby no longer existed at all? Brad Turner wasn't always the man who would hand his phone to another woman and let her stab his pregnant wife through a screen. But somewhere between climbing the corporate ladder and craving admiration from people who barely remembered his name, he became someone Maddie no longer recognized. To the outside world, Brad was the guy with the firm handshake, the easy laugh, the ambition that made supervisors take notice. At company events, he was magnetic, always surrounded by coworkers eager to impress him. But behind closed doors, when the applause faded and the bar tabs were paid, a different Brad surfaced. Short-tempered, restless, hungry for validation, Maddie was too exhausted to give. His dissatisfaction grew quietly, like mold under wallpaper. Every sacrifice Maddie made, working late shifts, budgeting every dollar, supporting his dreams, only fed his belief that he deserved more. More attention, more freedom, more excitement. And in walked Kendra Lowell, all sharp angles, red lipstick, and ambition disguised as admiration. Kendra knew exactly who Brad was before he knew it himself. She flattered him, fed his ego, told him he was wasting his potential with a wife who lacked drive. Every word was poison wrapped in sugar. Brad drank it in. With Kendra, he didn't feel small. He felt chosen, desired, important. She made him believe he was too good for the life he built with Maddie, too good for a wife who came home tired and swollen, too good for a baby who wasn't even born yet. What Brad never realized was this. Kendra wasn't drawn to him. She was drawn to opportunity. She had been fired twice from previous companies, not for incompetence, but for manipulation. And she recognized Brad immediately as the kind of man who wanted to be told he was extraordinary. A perfect puppet. She whispered, promises, promotions, connections, power, if only he'd unshackle himself from the dead weight at home. Brad, blinded by fantasy, followed her willingly. He didn't notice the way she watched him with calculation instead of affection. He didn't notice the secret she held over him, a secret that would later explode his life from the inside out. He didn't notice that everything he thought he controlled was already slipping from his hands. Because men like Brad never see the fall coming, not when someone is still applauding them on the way down. The unraveling of Maddie and Brad's marriage didn't happen in a single explosion. It happened in tiny, humiliating moments that piled up until the weight crushed her. But there was one moment, one vicious, unforgettable humiliation that marked the point of no return. It happened on a Thursday night. Maddie had just finished a double shift, her feet aching, her belly tight beneath her oversized sweater. She'd planned to surprise Brad with takeout from his favorite Thai place, an expensive splurge, but one she hoped would bring them closer again. She even practiced what she'd say. Maybe we could try counseling. Maybe we can fix this before the baby comes. But when she reached the rooftop lounge where Brad said he had a quick networking event, she froze. The place shimmered with warm lights and laughter, the kind of high-end bar where she felt instantly out of place. She stepped inside, clutching the paper bag of food, hoping she could blend into the background. And then she saw them. Brad and Kendra sitting far too close, laughing far too loudly. Kendra leaned in, whispering something in his ear. Brad smirked. The kind of smile he hadn't shown Maddie in months. Her heart stopped. Before she could walk away unnoticed, Kendra's sharp eyes caught her. Her lips curled into a cruel half-smile, the kind predators give prey that's already cornered. "Oh look," Kendra purred loudly, "your wife's here." Conversations around them stilled. Brad's face drained of color, not from guilt, but from annoyance. He stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "Maddie, what are you doing here?" She held up the takeout bag like a peace offering, though her hands shook. I just wanted to bring you dinner." Kendra let out a soft, mocking laugh. "How sweet. I guess some people still believe food fixes everything." The cliques at nearby tables snickered. Brad didn't defend her, didn't tell Kendra to stop, didn't take her hand like a decent husband would. He just sighed, embarrassed to be seen with her. In that moment, Maddie felt the truth settle like ice in her bones. Brad hadn't just drifted away, he'd already chosen a life where she was the outsider, the inconvenience, the burden to be hidden. She left without saying another word. And behind her, Kendra whispered 7 words that would echo painfully for days. "She won't last much longer in your world." The days after the rooftop, humiliation felt like moving through fog, heavy, cold, and suffocating. Maddie tried to hold herself together, but pregnancy has a way of magnifying every emotion until it becomes unbearable. She woke up nauseous, cried without warning, and found herself apologizing to the baby growing inside her for feelings she couldn't control. She kept replaying Brad's expression in her mind. Not guilt, not shock, embarrassment, as if she were an inconvenience, a reminder of a life he wanted to shed. That look alone was enough to break something inside her. Work didn't offer any escape. The long fluorescent hallways felt narrower. The whispers from coworkers, well-meaning or curious, felt louder. Even sitting at her desk became painful as stress tightened her chest. She forced herself to smile when people asked how she was doing, but her reflection in the office bathroom mirror told the truth. Pale skin, dark circles, swollen eyes, a woman sinking. At home, the silence was worse. Brad drifted in and out like a tenant rather than a husband. Sometimes he didn't come home at all. When he did, he brought Kendra's perfume with him. Maddie tried talking to him. She tried being calm. She tried everything except screaming, which sometimes felt like the only thing left inside her. But Brad dismissed every attempt. "You're too emotional. You're stressing the baby. You're imagining things." Each comment was a small wound, and Maddie absorbed them all because she didn't know how not to. One night, after crying until her throat burned, she opened her laptop and searched for prenatal support groups. Instead, she stumbled onto something unexpected, a line from a forum post that made her freeze. Stress in late pregnancy can trigger premature contractions. A sharp fear spread through her. She had been feeling tightness lately, cramps she ignored, pressure she chalked up to exhaustion, but now she wondered if her body was warning her about something far more dangerous. The next evening, when Brad brushed past her on his way out to another meeting, she felt a sudden tightening so sharp it forced her to grip the counter. She called his name, voice trembling. He didn't even turn around. "Take a Tylenol," he muttered. "You'll be fine." He closed the door behind him. The contraction eased, but something else didn't. For the first time, Maddie realized she might actually be safer without him. And that terrifying thought didn't feel wrong. The night the betrayal became undeniable wasn't loud or dramatic. It arrived quietly, like a storm slipping under a doorframe. Maddie was sitting at the edge of the bed, one hand on her belly, the other holding the phone she desperately wished wouldn't vibrate again. But it did. And this time, the vibration wasn't another cruel message, it was the absence of one. Brad had been gone for hours. She tried calling him once. Then, twice. On the third attempt, the call went straight to voicemail. Something inside her chest twisted, not jealousy, not hurt, but a chilling certainty. He wasn't coming home. Not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not ever in the way she needed him to. The apartment felt colder than usual. The dim lamp barely lit the nursery corner, where a half-assembled crib stood among unopened Amazon boxes of baby supplies she had ordered during a rare moment of optimism. She looked at it now and wondered how she had become the only parent building a home for a child both she and Brad had created. Another sharp contraction ripped through her. She gasped, gripping the sheets. Her doctor had warned her, avoid stress, rest as much as possible. But what rest was there when your heart was breaking in real time? She rose slowly, steadying herself against the dresser. She needed air. She needed clarity. But when she caught her reflection in the mirror, she froze. Her eyes, once so full of softness, looked different. Not empty. Not defeated. Awake. As another contraction tightened around her ribs, a sudden resolve took hold. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider an idea she once feared. Maybe this wasn't her failure. Maybe it was her chance to escape before she and her baby became casualties of Brad's choices. She began packing not frantically, but purposefully. Baby clothes, her insurance documents, a small notebook where she'd written her hopes for the future, everything she needed to protect the one life that still depended on her. Just as she zipped the last bag, headlights swept across the apartment wall. Her heart stopped. She peeked through the blinds. A sleek black Mercedes S-Class idled in the parking lot, not Brad's older sedan. Then the back door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, calm, familiar. A face from a moment in her past she had almost forgotten. Elliot Warren. And as he lifted his gaze toward her window, something in Maddie's spirit whispered, "This is the turning point." Maddie hesitated at the window, unsure whether the man below was real or a desperate hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But when the streetlight caught his face, the recognition came instantly. Elliot Warren, sharp suit, steady posture, the same calm eyes she remembered from years ago when she had unknowingly saved him from a career-ruining scandal with a single forwarded email. What was he doing here? And how did he know she needed help now? A soft knock pulled her from the window. Not loud, not demanding, just patient. She opened the door an inch. "Maddie?" His voice was low, familiar. "Are you all right?" Something in her wanted to collapse right then, but pride held her upright. "Why are you here?" "I was in Seattle for meetings," he said gently. "I saw you almost fall in the parking lot earlier. You looked terrified. I couldn't just drive away." Her breath hitched. She hadn't even realized anyone had seen that moment. Elliot's eyes skimmed her. "Packed bags. You're leaving." It wasn't a question. She swallowed hard. "I have to. Brad isn't—" Her voice cracked. "He let his mistress text me from his phone tonight." End quote. A flicker of something sharp, anger or protectiveness, passed behind Elliot's calm expression. "You don't deserve that. Especially not now." Another contraction seized her, more intense than the last. She gripped the doorway, wincing. Elliot reached out, steadying her with a hand that was firm but respectful. "How far apart are they?" he asked. "All business now." "Maybe 10 minutes, she whispered. "We need to get you checked by a doctor. Now." She hesitated. Trusting someone anyone felt dangerous. But the alternative was staying here, alone, waiting for a husband who didn't care whether she bled, broke, or disappeared. Elliot extended his hand. Not forcing, not pleading, just offering. And for the first time in months, someone was offering her safety instead of excuses. Maddie took a shaky breath. Then she placed her hand in his. As they walked to the Mercedes, her baby kicked sharply, almost as if sensing the shift. She glanced back at the apartment one last time. The walls that had once held her dreams now held nothing but echoes. Elliot opened the passenger door for her. "You and your child are safe with me. I promise." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. Exactly what she needed. And as the car pulled away, Maddie felt something unfamiliar rising inside her hope. The hum of the Mercedes S-Class was soft, almost soothing, as Elliot drove through the rain-soaked Seattle streets. For the first time in months, Maddie didn't feel the pressure of pretending she was fine. She leaned back against the leather seat, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the seatbelt as another contraction pulsed through her. Elliot noticed immediately. "Breathe with me," he said gently, matching her rhythm until the pain eased. His calmness wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't know she needed. They didn't go to the nearest hospital. Elliot took her to a private medical center, he trusted, quiet, discreet, efficient, the kind of place she never imagined she'd step foot in. As the staff rushed her into an exam room, Elliot stayed nearby, speaking to nurses, signing forms, taking responsibility without hesitation. Inside the room, the doctor checked her vitals, the baby's heartbeat, the contractions. "You're under significant stress," the doctor warned. "If it continues, you may go into early labor. If you are 14 have, if you are 14 have, if you are 14 have." Maddie nodded weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wasn't crying from fear alone, she was crying because someone finally believed her pain mattered. When the doctor left, Elliot entered quietly. He didn't bombard her with questions. He simply sat beside her, elbows on his knees, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "You don't have to explain anything," he said softly, "but you do need rest. Real rest. And you won't get that in that apartment. Mistress." She swallowed hard. "Brad won't even notice I'm gone." Elliot's jaw tightened, not with judgment, but with anger on her behalf. "Then it's a blessing you left before he had the chance to hurt you more." His words hit her unexpectedly deep. No one had ever framed her, leaving as strength, only failure. "I don't know where to go," she whispered. "Then come with me," Elliot said plainly. "Not forever, just until you're stable. My place in San Francisco is private and well-staffed. You'll have medical support, security, anything you need." It felt unreal, impossible that someone as powerful as Elliot Warren would open his world to her. But there was no pity in his eyes. Only concern and respect. A contraction tightened again, and he immediately stood at her side, letting her brace against his arm. "Let me help you," he murmured. "Let me give you and your baby a place to breathe." For the first time since Brad's betrayal, Maddie didn't feel trapped. She felt rescued. And maybe, just maybe, reborn. For the first few hours after the medical evaluation, Maddie drifted in and out of sleep. The dim hospital room, the soft beeping of monitors, and the steady rain tapping against the window created a cocoon she hadn't felt in months. When she finally woke fully, Elliot was sitting in a chair beside her bed, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking far less like the intimidating CEO she remembered, and more like someone who refused to leave until he knew she was safe. "You're awake," he said softly. She nodded, adjusting herself slowly. "You didn't have to stay." "I know," he replied, "but I wasn't going to leave you alone tonight." "In the morning," says. His unwavering presence stirred an old memory, one she hadn't revisited in years. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked. "Why now?" Elliot leaned back slightly, studying her. "Do you remember the audit scandal at Westridge Financial 5 years ago?" She frowned. "Barely. I was just an entry-level clerk back then." "You sent an email," he said. "A forwarded spreadsheet correcting an error your supervisor made. That document prevented me from being falsely tied to a misreported account. It saved my career." Her breath caught. I didn't even know." "You weren't meant to," he admitted. "Your department took the credit. But I never forgot your name." Maddie stared at him, stunned. All these years she had thought she was invisible, overlooked, unimportant. Yet her quiet diligence had saved the career of a man who went on to build an empire. "When I saw you earlier tonight," Elliot continued, voice tightening slightly, "you looked like someone standing on the edge of a cliff with no one to hold on to. I wasn't about to let the woman who once saved my future lose hers." A lump formed in her throat. No one, not even Brad, had ever spoken of her with that kind of gratitude, that kind of sincerity. "But why offer me a place to stay?" she whispered. "Because you need safety, stability, and someone who sees your worth." His expression softened. "I can give you that temporarily, if nothing else." Another contraction squeezed through her belly, gentler this time. Elliot instinctively reached out, steadying her hand. "Brad won't even know I'm gone yet," she murmured. "That's his loss," Elliot replied firmly, "not yours." For the first time since discovering Brad's betrayal, Maddie felt a shift inside her, not just hope, but recognition. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone had been watching her fall and chose to catch her. While Maddie lay resting under the soft hospital lights, Brad Turner was living in a completely different universe, one built on ego, lies, and a dangerous woman who knew exactly how to manipulate both. Brad sauntered into the same rooftop lounge where he had humiliated Maddie days before. Kendra was already there, draped in a red dress far bolder than her intentions pretended to be. She leaned back against the bar, swirling her cocktail with a smile too sharp to be sweet. "You're late," she purred. Brad shrugged, flashing the careless smirk he believed made him irresistible. "Got caught in traffic." Kendra's eyes narrowed. "Or with your little wife?" "She's fine," he snapped. "Probably sleeping. She's always tired." Kendra raised an eyebrow, not out of concern, but irritation. "You said you'd be done with her by now." "I'm not here to play second place." "He's now there's Akshastan. Although so." Brad rubbed the back of his neck, trying to hide the flicker of fear in his eyes. "It's complicated." "No, Brad," Kendra said, stepping closer. "You're complicated. I'm ambitious." Her tone shifted, icy, controlled. That was when Brad remembered the leverage she held. The secret. The mistake he made months ago that Kendra had discovered and stored away like a loaded weapon. "If your company knew you altered those client numbers," she said softly, "your promotion wouldn't just disappear. You'd be fired, maybe even investigated." Brad froze. Kendra smiled sweetly, tapping his chest with one manicured finger. "That's why you need me. That's why you'll do exactly what I say." Brad swallowed hard. He felt trapped, cornered. He hadn't realized how tightly her web had been spun until now. He wasn't in control. He wasn't even a partner. He was prey. Still, his pride tried to salvage dominance. "I'll leave Maddie soon. The baby complicates things." Kendra's smile faltered for the first time. "The baby is exactly why you should leave now." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. "What is it?" Brad asked. Kendra held up the phone. "Your wife's phone is off. It's been off all night." A strange, unwelcome dread slid into Brad's gut. "She always answers," he muttered. Kendra tilted her head, eyes gleaming with something that wasn't sympathy. Maybe she finally got tired of waiting. For the first time, Brad felt a cold fear settle in his bones. Because deep down, he knew Maddie leaving him was the one consequence he never prepared for. While Brad paced the rooftop lounge, struggling to swallow the growing panic, a storm of a very different kind was brewing beneath the surface, one that had nothing to do with Maddie's disappearance and everything to do with the dark secret Kendra had been dangling over him. Kendra didn't follow Brad when he abruptly grabbed his jacket and muttered, "I'm going home." She didn't need to. Instead, she slipped into the private restroom, locked the door, and pulled out her second phone, the one Brad didn't know existed. Her reflection in the mirror smirked back at her as she typed a message to a contact saved only as RL. "He's panicking. If Maddie's really gone, phase 2 begins." A reply came instantly. "Good. Once the numbers leak, Brad will be finished." Kendra's eyes glittered with satisfaction. She slipped the phone back into her purse and reapplied her lipstick, humming. To her, Brad wasn't a lover or a partner, he was a pawn. A stepping stone. Someone useful only until he wasn't. Meanwhile, miles away, Brad sped through the rain toward the apartment he had taken for granted far too long. For the first time, the silence in his car wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. He dialed Maddie's number again. Voicemail. He tried again. Still voicemail. A sickening thought clawed at him. What if she really left? He imagined walking into the apartment to find her curled up on the couch, angry, but still there, still his. Still waiting. She always waited. But for the first time in his life, Brad found himself afraid she wouldn't. When he finally reached the apartment complex, dread sat heavy in his stomach. He bolted up the stairs, fumbling with his keys, and pushed the door open. Nothing. Not the faint scent of her lavender lotion. Not the sound of her slippers on the hardwood. Not even the gentle hum of the baby mobile she used to test at night. Instead, the apartment was stripped of everything that mattered. Baby clothes gone, hospital bag gone, her notebooks gone, her presents gone. But there was something left behind. A white envelope on the kitchen counter with his name scrawled in handwriting he recognized instantly. Brad tore it open, expecting a letter. Instead, he found a single card. A business card. Elliot Warren, CEO, Warren Capital Group. On the back, a handwritten note. She is safe. Do not contact her. The room spun. Elliot Warren, the billionaire, the man Brad had seen on magazine covers. A hot wave of anger surged through him, but underneath it, something colder, more primal, fear. Because Brad suddenly realized this wasn't just a marital problem anymore. He was up against a man with power, resources, and a reason to protect Maddie. And Brad Turner, small, insecure, reckless, had never been more exposed in his life. Elliot Warren's private jet didn't feel like an aircraft. It felt like another world entirely. Soft lighting, plush leather seating, the faint scent of cedar and citrus. A world built for calm, for control, for people whose lives did not unravel in the middle of the night. Maddie sat near the window, wrapped in a blanket the flight attendant had placed gently over her knees. She wasn't used to this kind of care. She wasn't used to anyone noticing her needs before she voiced them. She stared out at the clouds, hands resting protectively on her belly. The baby fluttered, almost as if sensing the shift from chaos to safety. For the first time since her contractions had started, Maddie felt her breathing slow, her shoulders loosen. She wasn't fully safe yet, but she was no longer alone. Across the aisle, Elliot watched her quietly, not intrusively, not with pity, but with a calm attentiveness that made her wonder why someone like him would care so fiercely. "You're more relaxed," he noted softly. "I'm trying to be," she admitted, "but everything feels unreal." Elliot leaned forward slightly. "It is unreal. You've carried too much pain alone. No one should go through what you went through tonight." She swallowed the lump forming in her throat. "Brad didn't even check on me." Elliot's jaw tightened. "Brad Turner stopped deserving you the moment he stopped protecting you." The words hit deeper than she expected. She looked away, trying to hide the sting of tears. Elliot's voice softened again. "When we land, you'll stay at my San Francisco home. It's quiet, secure, and staffed with people I trust. You'll have medical care, a private suite, anything you need." "That's too much," she whispered. "It's not enough," he corrected gently. She let out a trembling breath, unsure how to carry the weight of such unexpected kindness. No one had ever stepped into her life this way, not to control her, but to shield her. As the jet touched down hours later, dawn was breaking over the San Francisco skyline. The city glowed gold against the water, a calm contrast to the storm she had left behind. Elliot guided her down the steps, steadying her with a warm hand at her elbow. Awaiting them was a sleek black SUV and a private medical team. Maddie blinked in disbelief. "All of this? For me?" "For you," Elliot said simply, "and your child." In that moment, for the first time since Brad's betrayal began, Maddie felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Worth. Brad Turner didn't sleep that night. He paced the apartment like a man losing his mind, replaying every moment he had brushed Maddie off, every time he told her she was overreacting, every night he chose Kendra instead of coming home. He kept glancing at Elliot Warren's business card like it was a loaded gun pointed at his head. Why would a billionaire care about Maddie? How did they even know each other? And why would Elliot be the one to say she was safe? The questions clawed at Brad's nerves, shredding the last of his bravado. But while Brad unraveled, Kendra Lowell was building her next move. She barged into the apartment the next morning without knocking, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Where is she?" she demanded. "Gone," Brad muttered, running a hand through his hair. "She left with someone." Unquote. Kendra's eyes narrowed. "Define someone." Brad hesitated. "Elliot Warren." For the first time since he met her, Kendra's confidence slipped. "The Elliot Warren, as in Warren Capital?" Her voice cracked. "Brad, what did you get us into?" But before Brad could answer, his phone buzzed violently. A notification from his company's internal system. His blood ran cold. Confidential alert. Unusual activity flagged in the Turner portfolio. Executive review underway. He stared at the screen, horror blooming. This can't be happening. They're looking at the numbers. The numbers you altered," Kendra snapped. "Don't you dare put this on me. You fudged the report first. I just found it. And blackmailed me with it." Kendra crossed her arms. "It's not my fault, you're sloppy, Brad." But then another notification appeared, this time from an unknown email. Subject: File release timeline. Body: Your manipulation of client accounts will be public by Friday. Prepare accordingly. Attached was a zip file. Brad felt sick. Someone's releasing the data. Kendra went still. "This wasn't me." "Then who?" Before he could finish, her expression changed, eyes widening, face draining of color. "Oh my God," she whispered. "RL isn't from my side. Someone else is pulling strings." Brad's heart hammered. Who would want to ruin me like this? Kendra swallowed, taking a shaky step back. Someone powerful, someone who wants you out of Maddie's life permanently. And then, almost simultaneously, both arrived at the same terrifying possibility. Elliot Warren, the man Maddie had left with. The man who had the resources to make scandals happen. The man who signed the note. She is safe? Brad staggered as the truth crashed over him. He wasn't losing his wife. He was being erased. Sunlight filtered gently through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elliot Warren's San Francisco penthouse, casting a warm glow across the polished hardwood floors. Maddie stood near the glass, hands cradling her belly as she stared out at the bay. The air felt different here, lighter, safer, so unlike the cramped Seattle apartment where she had cried herself to sleep. Elliot entered quietly, holding a tray with tea and a small plate of fresh fruit. The doctor said you need steady nutrition, he said, setting it on the table. Try to eat a little. Maddie smiled faintly. You don't have to wait on me. I know, he replied, but I want to. There was no flirtation in his tone, no pressure, just steady kindness she wasn't used to receiving. It both comforted and frightened her. I feel like an inconvenience, she murmured. Never to me, Elliot said, more firmly than she expected. You've been surviving in chaos for so long, you've forgotten what normal care feels like. His words struck something raw inside her. She turned away, blinking back tears. Brad never saw me, she whispered. Not really. Elliot stepped closer, but not too close. I saw you, Maddie, even back then, when you didn't know it. Her breath caught. Why? I was nobody. You were the only person in a corrupt department who did the right thing, Elliot said quietly. Integrity is rare. I never forgot your name because people like you don't cross my path often. Her throat tightened with emotion she couldn't name. Gratitude, relief, a strange, fragile sense of being valued. Before she could respond, a nurse knocked gently and entered to check her vitals. Your stress levels have dropped significantly, she said with a smile. Whatever environment you were in before this is much better for you and the baby. Maddie glanced at Elliot, who offered a reassuring nod. When the nurse left, she finally asked the question, hovering between them. How long can I stay here? As long as you need, Elliot answered immediately. You're not a burden. You're under my protection now. His phrasing, it wasn't possessive. It was a vow. She exhaled shakily, her heart stirring in ways she didn't yet understand. She wasn't ready for anything beyond survival. But for the first time in months, she felt seen, valued, safe. And deep in her chest, something new flickered, something she thought she'd lost forever. The beginning of self-worth. The calm Maddie had been rebuilding shattered late one evening, just as the city lights flickered across San Francisco Bay. She was in the living room, sipping warm chamomile tea, when a sudden, sharp pain tore through her abdomen. Not the dull pressure of normal contractions, this was different. Fiercer, immediate. Her breath hitched. The mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the floor. Within seconds, Elliot was beside her. Maddie, talk to me. What's happening? I don't know, she gasped, clutching her belly. It hurts more than before. Elliot didn't hesitate. He lifted her gently, guiding her toward the hallway where the private medical team kept emergency supplies. His calmness didn't mask the fear in his eyes. Stay with me, he repeated, voice steady but urgent. You and the baby are going to be fine. End quote. 2000 end quote. Another contraction hit, stronger than the last. Maddie cried out, the sound echoing painfully through the penthouse. She had spent months holding pain inside. This was the first time she let it out. The doctor arrived within moments, already gloving her hands. She's in early labor, she assessed quickly. And progressing fast. No, Maddie whispered, tears spilling. It's too early. Elliot knelt beside her, taking her trembling hand. You're not alone. You're safe. I promise you nothing will happen to you without me here. The doctor nodded toward Elliot. We need to move her now. Lights blurred as they wheeled Maddie through the private elevator and into a medical transport waiting downstairs. Rain hammered the city, the storm outside mirroring the panic building in her chest. Inside the transport, Maddie struggled to breathe through the contractions. Her thoughts flashed wildly, Brad's cruelty, Kendra's venom, the years she spent surviving instead of living. But when she looked at Elliot, walking beside the stretcher with determination in his stride, one realization pushed through the chaos. She finally had someone who wouldn't leave her. The ride to the hospital lasted minutes, though it felt like hours. Once inside the private maternity suite Elliot had prepared, the medical staff moved with precision while Elliot stayed rooted at Maddie's side. "Elliot," she whispered through trembling lips, "I'm scared." "I know," he said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek, "but look at me. I'm here. You are not doing this alone." A contraction tore through her, and she squeezed his hand until he winced, but he didn't pull away. As alarms beeped and nurses rushed around her, Maddie felt the world narrowing into 2 points of light. Her baby fighting to enter the world, and Elliot fighting just as hard to keep her in it. Back in Seattle, Brad Turner was experiencing the longest night of his life, though not for the reasons one might expect from a man whose wife was in premature labor. He had no idea, not a single clue. While Maddie fought through waves of pain in a private maternity suite hundreds of miles away, Brad wasn't beside her, wasn't calling hospitals, wasn't searching with frantic desperation. He was sitting in the dim corner of his apartment, trembling hands clutching a whiskey glass he couldn't bring himself to drink. His phone lay on the coffee table. Maddie's unanswered calls from earlier still staring at him like ghosts. "How could she leave?" he muttered to himself. "She always forgave me. She always stayed." But tonight, for the first time, Maddie had stopped staying. And the silence, her silence, was louder than any argument she had ever made. He jabbed at his phone, calling her again, straight to voicemail. Kendra stormed into the apartment without knocking, soaked from the rain. "Your office is in chaos," she snapped. "People are talking. Files have leaked, Brad. Leaked." Brad didn't even look up. "I can't deal with that right now." "And Fortno." "Then deal with this," she barked, tossing a printed report onto the table. "Your fraud investigation is officially internal, and Elliot Warren's name has surfaced 3 times. Brad's head jerked up. "Why would a billionaire care about me?" Kendra stared at him like he was a child. "He doesn't care about you. He cares about Maddie." Brad's stomach dropped. The room, the whiskey, the entire night tilted. "Maddie," he whispered. For the first time, his voice broke. She was having contractions earlier. What if something happened? Kendra scoffed. "Please, she's fine. She just ran off and found someone willing to worship her." The words hit him like a slap. Worship her? He hadn't worshipped her. He hadn't even protected her. He realized too late that Elliot Warren had stepped into a role he'd abandoned long ago. Brad scrambled for his phone, dialing hospital after hospital in Seattle. No admissions for a Maddie Turner. No emergency calls under her insurance number. No records. Panic finally erupted, raw and uncontrolled. "Where is my wife?" he shouted, slamming his fist into the table. Kendra crossed her arms. "Brad, she's not your wife anymore, and she's certainly not your responsibility." The words were toxic. He snapped. "That is my child," he roared. But even as he said it, a chilling realization slid down his spine. He didn't even know if that child had survived the night. Across the country, Maddie lay in a hospital bed fighting for her baby's life. And the man she married wasn't there. But the man who cared for her was. By the time dawn crept over San Francisco, Maddie was exhausted, trembling, and clinging to the rail of her hospital bed. Hours of contractions had left her breathless, but the baby was stable, holding on with the same quiet strength Maddie had learned to live by. Elliot never left her side. Not once. When doctors stepped out for a moment to review her progress, Maddie lay back, sweat-damp hair clinging to her cheeks. Elliot gently adjusted her blanket. "You're doing incredible," he murmured. "You and your child are fighters." She managed a weak smile. "I don't feel strong." "I do," he said. "I've seen strength in boardrooms, in negotiations, in crises. Nothing compares to what you've done tonight." Before she could respond, the door flew open. A nurse hurried inside. "Mr. Warren, there's a visitor downstairs demanding to be allowed up. Security says he's becoming aggressive." Maddie's heart stilled. "Brad." Elliot's expression hardened instantly, shifting from guardian to something sharper, protective, decisive, immovable. "She is not to be disturbed," he said. "No exceptions." The nurse nodded. "I'll inform security." Maddie's pulse raced. "He can't be here. He can't see me like this." Elliot leaned forward, taking her trembling hand. "Maddie, breathe. You don't owe him access to your pain." Tears filled her eyes. "But the baby, he'll say he has rights." Elliot's jaw tightened. A man who abandons a woman in labor forfeits the privilege of claiming anything. Just then, raised voices echoed faintly from the hallway. Brad was shouting, demanding, cursing. Every ugly tone Maddie had endured, now exposed under bright hospital lights. "You can't keep me from her," Brad yelled. "She's my wife. That's my baby." End quote. A security officer responded firmly, "Sir, she is under medical care and has declined visitors." "I didn't decline," Brad started, but the officer cut him off. "Sir, Mr. Warren delivered a formal protection order. Unless Mrs. Carter requests you, you will leave." Silence hit like a slap. Brad Turner, the man who mocked her, ignored her contractions, handed his mistress the phone to torment her, now stood helpless behind a wall he had built himself. For the first time since the chaos began, Maddie didn't feel fear. She felt clarity. She wiped her tears. "Elliot, can you tell them I don't want to see him?" Elliot nodded gently. "Of course." As he stepped out to deliver her message, Maddie heard Brad's voice break, truly break for the first time. "Maddie, please, please." But the door remained closed, a boundary she had never allowed herself to draw. Finally, stood firm. And for the first time, she felt the power of choosing herself. Morning sunlight streamed softly through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over Maddie's room. The chaos of the night had settled into a quiet stillness. Her newborn daughter slept peacefully in the bassinet beside her. Wrapped in a pale pink blanket, Maddie watched the tiny rise and fall of her chest, awe filling every corner of her heart. She had survived. The baby had survived. And for the first time in years, Maddie felt whole. Elliot entered quietly, holding a folder. "How are my two girls doing?" he asked, his smile gentle but unmistakably proud. Maddie blushed, brushing her fingers against the baby's cheek. "We're okay, better than okay." He set the folder on the bed. "I need to show you something, only if you're ready." Inside were legal documents, ones she didn't expect. The fraud investigation against Brad had escalated overnight. Evidence, emails, timestamps, things Kendra thought she controlled had been traced back cleanly. Brad was suspended indefinitely. The company was pressing charges. And Maddie, because she was still legally tied to him, was protected from financial fallout. She let out a slow breath. "This is everything he built. Everything he built on lies," Elliot corrected softly. "Actions have consequences. He made his choices." As if on cue, security knocked. "Mr. Warren, Brad Turner has returned. He's demanding to speak with Mrs. Carter." Maddie closed her eyes. This was the last loose thread. "Send him in," she said, but only for 1 minute. Brad entered, disheveled, desperate. The man who once boasted about being untouchable now looked painfully small. "Maddie," he choked out, eyes darting from her to the baby. "I didn't know. I never meant." She held up a hand, calm, steady. "Brad, we're done. Completely done." He blinked, stunned. "But that's my—" "She's not your anything," Maddie said quietly. "You weren't there. You never protected us, and you don't get to claim what you abandoned." Brad dropped to his knees, but she didn't flinch. The power had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. Security escorted him out as his pleas echoed down the hall. Silence returned. A peaceful one this time. Elliot stepped beside her. "You handled that with more strength than anyone I've ever known." Maddie exhaled shakily. "I think I finally believe I deserve better." He reached for her hand, slow, respectful, nothing rushed. "If you ever choose to build a new life, I'd like to be part of it." She looked at him, her daughter sleeping between them, the future unfolding gently like morning light. And for the first time, Maddie didn't feel afraid of what came next. She felt ready. "All right, my wonderful friends. So that's where our story comes to an end. And if you are still here with me right now, truly here, reading these last words, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a way that matters. And maybe, just maybe, it's because part of Maddie's story feels like it echoes inside your own life. Here's what this story whispers to us. Life will break you sometimes quietly, slowly, painfully. People you love may fail you. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Pain doesn't mean you're losing. Pain means you're transforming. Maddie learned that choosing herself wasn't selfish, it was survival. And you, my friend, deserve that same gentleness, that same courage, that same right to rebuild. So if this ending reached you, if it made you feel something, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like so YouTube knows this story mattered. Share it with someone who needs strength tonight. And subscribe to our channel so you never walk through these stories or your own storms alone. Because in this space, we heal together. And as the Stoics believed, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Let's keep choosing that power every single day.